Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Two Wheels Paradise, your favorite motorcycle channel on YouTube. My name is Meshak as usual, and here we are in Machakos. Yeah, you see, this is Machakos. I'm not even very sure exact name of this village, but it is just after Mukukuni. There is a name Mukukuni somewhere around. There's a Mukukuni name somewhere. So I want to believe this is also part of that Mukukuni village. However, that's not the reason why we are here. The primary reason we are here is this. As you have watched the previous videos, today is a continuation of the same Tekken 200 discovery, and the discussion for this video is not particularly about this unit specifically, but how to handle a brand new motorcycle. There is something called engine braking. I am very sure you have heard that name, engine braking. And the discussion for today is to actually explain what engine braking is, why it is very necessary, and how it is done. We have seen a lot of times people purchasing new motorcycles, and before the end of 6 months of using it, the motorcycle is already dead, requiring major service, major repairs, especially engine and transmission. So if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do so. Take a second, hit that sub button. Also remember the notification bell icon, turn it on, so that whenever we upload a video, you will get notified. A personal notification will come that something nice has just landed on your most favorite YouTube channel, Two Wheels Paradise. Let's get into business. Engine braking. What is it? We are not talking about hitting your engine to brake. That's not what we mean when we say we are braking in the engine. The particular unit I have in my hands is only 200 and something kilometers. Let me confirm. I always like giving factual information. We are at 255.9. More or less like 256 kilometers from zero. 256 kilometers from zero. And I am the first person to ride this bike. The very first person to ride this bike. I got it from the showroom at 0.00. It was brand new. Assembly was finished as I waited. I was there. So I am very sure, 101% sure that I am the first person to ride this motorcycle. If anything goes wrong with that engine, I can only blame myself. And for you to avoid such instances where you have to squarely blame yourself for mishandling a motorcycle, you need to understand the dynamics of a new engine. This new engine, the one we have here, has only done 200 kilometers. Engines are made of metal. And metal moves inside that engine. A lot of metallic pieces are moving inside that engine to make it run. We have the main part we call the crankshaft down here. We have the crankshaft down here. This is called the crankcase. Okay, the crankcase. We have a block, a cylinder block somewhere here. Okay, and then we have the cylinder head up here. These parts are different. This one. They are different. We have the crankcase, we have the block, we have the cylinder head. Somewhere around here, we have the gearbox. Where this chain comes, there is a sprocket here. That sprocket is directly attached to the main gear shaft. We have like 1,000 pieces of metal. moving round in different directions, different speeds, just to make this engine what it is. Right? And as you know, for those who have been to some physics class, basic physics class, metal expands when heated. Get that? Metal expands when heated. But as you continue heating it, I'm not saying banging, the heating of banging. I'm talking about the temperatures. Heating of temperatures. Temperatures in the engine go as high as 100 plus degrees. Over 100. There is a lot of heat going on down there. Metal parts will expand as the heat increases, and at night when you park this bike and it is so cold, the metal parts will shrink. That is the physics I'm talking about. Metal parts will shrink. Not necessarily so much that you can be able to see, but there is some micrometers, something very small you can only see in a microscope that shrinks and expands. All right? There is the heating, the shrinking, the expanding going on in this engine. And since this is new, the parts inside this engine have never been to environments where there is so much heat. They have never been to an environment where there is so much heat. They require to heat slowly, cool slowly, continue with the process of heating and cooling and heating and cooling until they get to some standard size where they do not expand so much, they do not shrink so much. Of more importance in this engine is some parts that we have around the block, wrapped around the piston, we call the piston lings. Piston lings. Piston lings are also metallic. They expand and they shrink. They need to be given time to expand, to shrink, until they sit in properly inside this block so that they can be able to do their business of holding compression from up here, not to go to the oil, the air, the compressed air, and also holding oil from climbing up through the piston to the combustion chamber around here, because we do not require any oil in the combustion chamber. The only thing we need inside there is air that comes from the airbox, fuel that comes from the tank, and spark that comes from this guy, the spark plug. We only need three things: spark, fuel from the tank, air that comes from the airbox through the carburetor and then into the combustion chamber. Fuel comes from the tank down to the carburetor, mixes with air, then it is pushed to the engine. When they get there, this guy throws some spark and then explosion happens. It is called four-stroke combustion. A lot of science in there, but we don't require any other liquid apart from petrol to get there. Oil that is circulating at very high pressure from the lower side of the engine should not come up here. Should not come up here. And it is protected by the piston lings. Those piston lings are moving within a cylinder, a metallic wall. So what happens when you mess around with it, those metallic pieces we are calling piston lings will scratch against that cylinder wall and damage it. Something else, we have valves up here, other metallic parts called valves, which are also opening and closing to do their business together with the piston through a system called timing. They open, they let fuel in, they open, they let exhaust gases out, timing. And all that thing is coordinated from the crankshaft. All right? It comes from down here. So when you mess around with a bike, those piston links will scratch the cylinder wall. Oil is going to get through those scratches and come up to the combustion chamber. Or you can actually bend your valves because they are just thin pieces of metal. They can bend or even break. When an engine is new, when an engine is new, the metallic parts have not been able to expand, shrink, move, and sit in properly to where they are supposed to sit. Because remember, someone fixed them in there. And there is no way you can be 100% correct. There is some millimeters of error in humanity whenever a human being is doing something. So you give them time to sit in properly, to lock what they are supposed to lock properly. You expose them to that tension of movement, high speed movement, until they lock in properly. And that process goes in for some few hundreds of kilometers. The first like 500 kilometers are very serious. There is no room for error. One of the mistakes I see people doing is leveling the motorcycle so high such that the revolutions, you see this? You see that green line? The revolutions that run from 0 to 14, sometimes 0 to 12, depending on which bike it is, the revolutions run so high up to the red part. You see the red part? This is a dangerous part that you should never get anywhere close. The manufacturer is telling you that this part is there if you want to run the motorcycle all the way to there, but it is red because it is not supposed to be used in a normal circumstance. So you find that someone levels the bike, especially on neutral gear, the bike is not moving. You level the bike so high until it gets to this level. The pieces of metals you are leveling to run so high are new parts that have not been able to sit in properly. And remember, these numbers from 0 to 14, they are multiplied by 1000. So when you level the motorcycle to 6, the piston is moving up and down 6,000 times per minute. Just slow down and understand that. 6 means 6,000 revolutions per minute. Per minute. So if you count 1 to 60, 1 minute, this thing has already moved 6,000 times. That is so high. So high. That speed is so high. This bike has not been able to sit in properly. The metal parts are still trying to figure out what they are supposed to do, trying to find their way around. And then there you are, pushing this bike all the way to red line. It is a mistake I have seen people making, and I usually discourage it very, very much. Stop leveling your motorcycle, especially when it is not moving. If you will get to 6,000, get to 6,000 when every other part is moving. Because remember, when you are leveling the bike on neutral gear, the gearbox is at stop. The gearbox, this part of the engine is not moving. Some things are not moving. But when the engine gets to 6,000 RPM on the highway, everything in that engine is moving. So it is even safer because everything is moving. Everything is moving. The gearbox, the crankshaft, the valves, everything is moving. But when you leave it on neutral gear, you have already disconnected some parts. So the engine is moving on one side, the other side is not moving. Very, very dangerous. You should not do that. You shouldn't do that. Wait until you get to 1,000 kilometers and change the oil. The oil we have in this engine is not the best quality of oil. That oil that you get into a brand new engine, whether it is a vehicle, whether it is whatever it is, the first engine oil is not the best quality. It is usually a very light engine that will help lubricate very fast, but not as the best then you drain it after 1,000 kilometers. And the reason why it is usually a very, very light quality of oil, it is to make it circulate faster, to protect the new parts from scratching each other. That's the reason why we have very, very light oil inside here. Very light. Very, very light. The quality of oil is very light. And it is deliberate to make sure that it is circulating very fast inside the engine to clear up any chances of the engine scratching, parts inside the engine scratching each other. So you should not even run this bike, push it to highway speeds. Don't test top speed, don't test anything. Ride the bike the way it is supposed to be ridden, slowly, consistently, maintain constant speed until you get to 1,000 kilometers. Because after 1,000 kilometers, you will be required to drain the oil and then replace it with the normal oil that you will be using from there henceforth. So it is not in your business to test this bike, how fast it can go, how powerful it is. It is not the time to go chasing other people on the highway. It is whether it is 1,000 cc, whether it is a 1,500 cc motorcycle. Do not do that. Don't do that. Whether it is a vehicle that you have purchased brand new from a showroom, the first 1,000 kilometers are not for you to test how powerful that bike is. The other reason why you need to be a bit slow on the first 1,000 kilometers, you do not know how well the brakes are working. You are testing them. Because remember, I told you, manufacturing error is acceptable. There are errors everywhere. You could find that this caliper had an issue from the factory. This specific one, not the brand of the caliper, that this specific unit. Something was wrong here. Then it is the time now you are testing top speed, testing cornering, leaning, chasing everyone. You realize the very, very long time that the brakes are not working the way they are supposed to work. The first 1,000 kilometers are for you to actually see how safe this motorcycle is for you to continue riding. The shocks, they have never been used again. Whether they are made by whatever company, whatever you call them, the best of the best brands, there can be an error. And that's why you see companies recalling their vehicle. Even bikes. If you can remember, BMW last year, 2023, they recalled a lot of units of the 1250 GS because of the gearbox and the shaft, the drive shaft issues. It was braking right, left, center all over the world. People complained and the company started recalling. If a company as premium as BMW can make mistakes, what do you think happens to the others? The first 1,000 kilometers are for you to actually see how safe this motorcycle is. So do not go pushing it, do not go testing anything. It is not in your business to test anything. Don't test anything. I'm repeating, don't test anything. Unless you have some skills to test the suspension like what I did in the previous video, take the bike off-road to some place and then have a feeling of how that bike responds. You are actually looking for feedback. You are not going there to test how fast you can brake them. You're not going there to test how fast you can brake them. You're going there to test how comfortable they are. That kind of test, if it's what you're doing, then it is acceptable. Take the bike to the highway, just feel how comfortable it is on normal highway speeds of 100 kilometers an hour. You can keep it there. But for small bikes, I discourage trying to get to 100. Just try to keep it 80 and below for like 500 kilometers from zero. Then from there, you can increase the speed slowly, get to 95 to 100. Then from there, give it time for the braking period to end. Then you can see how comfortable it is landing on the normal highway speeds. A lot of people have complained online because of different brands of motorcycles that we have had in this world. But some of them are the problem, not the motorcycles. Some of them are the problem. This motorcycle is made in China by a company. You have seen someone with a German bike, an European bike. You want to see if it is possible to overtake them with the one you have here. So what you're doing is making the motorcycle suffer for your own gratification. You're trying to prove something that will not have any glory. This motorcycle is a 200cc, the one I have here, made for off-road and adventure rides like what I am doing. I am very comfortable doing 90-95 kilometers an hour, and you can go from here to the moon. Just understand, it is not a sport bike. Even if you buy a sport bike at 300cc, stop learning with people who have bigger bikes, trying to prove that you can catch up with them. Remember, for you to maintain 140 kilometers an hour on a 300cc sport bike, you will be riding way into the red line. Inside the red zone, from 10 to 14, inside the red zone, the long place to be riding. But someone with a 600cc will be riding around 4,000 RPM. You are already doing 12, they are doing 4. You are doing 12, they are doing 4. Doing the same speed. By the end of the day, your bike is suffering. You need to understand how to differentiate what bikes are made for, who made them, okay? What capacities they have. You must understand this. For braking period, give it 1,000 kilometers. 1,000. I'm talking about 1,000. Complete a whole cycle of 1,000 kilometers. Then change the oil. Change the oil, and then you can have a very good bike. This is a motorcycle you can keep until 80,000-90,000 kilometers. But if you start testing top speed at 400 kilometers already from zero, you can trust me, you will not get to 5,000 with it. You will not get to 5,000 kilometers with it if you start testing top speed from brand new. That's why you find that we have people with bikes 100,000 kilometers, they are changing oils, changing plugs, they are still running. The same brand of motorcycle, some people killed at 4,000 kilometers. Long riding habits. So for braking period, I hope you understand what I'm talking about. This is Two Wheels Paradise, always talking about little stuff. My name is Meshak. God bless you. Engine braking, 0 to 1,000 kilometers. Be as polite as possible. Observe everything. Don't test anything. See you around.